The story begins with a little girl asking an older woman what story she plans to tell her tonight, so she gives her some suggestions, but she's not interested in those, so the woman shares a story about a wolf who protected a harvest's village and promised bountiful wheat harvests. The wolf kept its promise for a long time, but no one knows when this pact began, and she tells that the village treasured this wolf and its blessings, but unfortunately, as time went on, people no longer believed in the wolf. The girl asks what happened to the wolf, but before we find out, we cut to a man traveling somewhere via carriage. The man encounters a group of guards and knights. He tells them he's a traveling merchant. The man shows what's hiding underneath his cargo's blanket, in which he has some fur pelts and wheat, so the knight and his guards stand aside, allowing the merchant to continue his travels. The merchant arrives at a village and introduces himself as Craft Lawrence, and he compliments the villagers on their harvests and asks them where he can find a person named Yuri. The villagers inform Lawrence about Yuri's whereabouts and feel some villagers may end up like someone named Holo since they lack exceptional skills. Lawrence wonders who Holo is, then he continues his travels and overhears several villagers rambling about Holo. Lawrence sees Yuri, he also sees him but trips. Several villagers pick Yuri up and carry him somewhere while referring to Yuri as Holo. Yuri says he'll speak with Lawrence later, and the villagers lock him up inside a barn. Lawrence then continues and stops near a lake and plans to rest there for the night. He checks his cargo and learns a girl sleeping inside, and she gets up and howls at the sky. She then turns to Lawrence and asks him for alcohol, but Lawrence wants to ask her why he's in her vehicle. She ignores his question and grabs the meat he dropped on the floor. Lawrence pulls out a knife. The girl realizes Lawrence isn't one of the villagers and eats the meat. She says she slipped into his carriage to escape the village. She also tells Lawrence that she's Holo and she teases Lawrence about it. Lawrence knows Holo is the name of the harvest god and wonders if she really is a god. Holo says she came from a land up north called Yoitsu. It says many call her Holo the wise wolf, and she cuddles against Lawrence's fur pelts to escape the cold. Lawrence plans to turn Holo over to the church, and she says she doesn't like the church and doesn't want to interact with the village's chief. Lawrence says he's willing to let Holo accompany him and feels if she's the god of the harvests, she'll help him obtain exceptional wealth. Holo asks if Lawrence wants to see her true form, and he says he does, but she says that most creatures need to pay a price to change forms, but as for her, she needs blood from a living being or some wheat. Holo eats some wheat and transforms, which surprises Lawrence, and she disappears, and he wonders what happened to her. Lawrence meets a man and says he wants to stay the night. Yuri greets Lawrence and the other man shows Lawrence a room he can use. Later, Lawrence visits the dining area and sees Yuri sitting at a table littered with food. Yuri says these are food offerings for Holo, but he says Lawrence can eat some of it. Lawrence questions why Yuri's not locked up for a week, and Yuri says the game he and the villagers took part in is simple superstition and feels the tales surrounding a wolf living in the wheat fields are false and an excuse for the villagers to hold a festival. Yuri and Lawrence drink and we learn that this village is called Pasol Village. Yuri believes Lawrence started buying wheat before Count Urhendat became Pasol Village's lord. While we receive a flashback of Yuri's first encounter with Lawrence, Yuri explains how the previous Pasol Village lord handled the area's taxes and their wheat. Yuri tells him how much Pasol Village has grown since then and says merchants from large towns come by Pasol Village to buy wheat. Yuri tells Lawrence he'd like to negotiate wheat prices with him again. Outside, Yuri tells Lawrence they don't need to rely on Holo as he still believes the tale is just a myth. Lawrence returns to his room and contemplates Yuri's remark about Holo. Holo greets Lawrence and Lawrence is surprised that Holo is in the village. She tells Lawrence that she lives inside the wheat and can be difficult for her to escape from there during harvests, but if there is a larger amount of wheat then she can move to that wheat without being seen by humans. Holo says she's indebted to Lawrence and asks him if he's afraid of her, and we see a flashback of the scene where Holo transformed in front of Lawrence. He is shown whimpering on the ground. Holo says she only showed a few humans her true form and shares how they responded after seeing her real state. Lawrence asks Holo if she has any places in mind that she'd like to go to, and Holo says she'd like to head north. We cut to Lawrence leaving Pasol Village in the morning and tells Holo that it's safe for her to come out. Holo comes out and Lawrence realizes she's wearing one of his garments, and he isn't thrilled about her wearing them. Holo teases Lawrence about it and asks if she can travel with him, and the two ride off somewhere. We see Lawrence resting near his carriage, but Holo wakes up and Holo tells Lawrence that a storm is approaching. The two head to a nearby town and stay at an inn for the night. Inside, Lawrence asks Holo what he should do with their wheat, and she tells Lawrence as long as she's alive the wheat will never spoil or wither. She says Lawrence can thresh and store the wheat somewhere if he wants to. Holo then sniffs Lawrence, complimenting him on his looks and telling him he should look after himself more. Lawrence says he doesn't want his appearance to affect his work ethic. After more appearance-related chatter, Lawrence suggests that they dry their clothes in the common room because it's heated properly. Outside, Lawrence tells Holo to ensure that she stays hidden with her attire, and Holo complies, though she states she never needed to hide her appearance from people before. Lawrence meets with an unknown man, informing him about his merchant-centric activities and strategies. The merchant Lawrence is speaking with says he should stop by his place at Parenzo when he gets the opportunity. When the merchant and his wife leave, another businessman acknowledges Lawrence's skills. Lawrence tells the businessman that if he wants to succeed, he must try his best, and the man wanders toward Lawrence, introducing himself as Jaron. He says he's a rookie merchant, and Lawrence introduces himself in Holo to Jaron. But before Jaron tries to get a peek at Holo's looks, Holo uses her flavorful remarks to convince Jaron to stop. Later, Holo and Lawrence return to their inn room, and Lawrence hands Holo a bag of wheat. He says she can hang it around her neck, and Holo places the wheat bag on her bed and says she wants the goat cheese meal Lawrence prepared. Lawrence stops Holo, telling her that he has to donate a lot of cash for the items they have now. He tells Holo she must pay him back for all the things he got for her. Holo and Lawrence indulge in their respective meals. While eating, Lawrence asks Holo about her lie detection abilities, and Holo says she can tell when someone is lying to her and notes how Lawrence's compliment regarding her tale was a lie. However, Holo admits she can't detect lies all the time and says it's up to Lawrence to believe her. Holo tells Lawrence that he and Jaron feel like children to her, but she argues Lawrence is more mature than Jaron. In a flashback, Jaron informs the pair about a new silver coin that's being made. He says it's worth the same as the old one, but when exchanged for the currency of other countries, its value will increase, and Lawrence wonders if he should gather more of the current silver coins. He feels if they exchange those for new ones, he and Holo can score a huge profit. Jaron tries negotiating with Lawrence, but Lawrence notices Holo is bothered by Jaron's words. In the present, Holo tells Lawrence that Jaron is lying, but she doesn't know which part of his deal he was lying about. Holo gives Lawrence some wisdom regarding lies, and she asks Lawrence how he'd handle Jaron's negotiation if she wasn't around. Lawrence says he set the intel aside and pretended to be on board with Jaron's offer. He says if it was true, he'd make a profit, but if it's false, he'll know someone is plotting something, and this convinces Lawrence to investigate the situation, resulting in him discovering a money-making fiasco. Holo then alludes to it being a lie, and Lawrence catches on, and Holo knows Lawrence would still act like he's interested in Jaron's deal. Lawrence visits a well in the morning, and Holo leaves from the church and reunites with Lawrence. Holo tells Lawrence that she was listening to the church's preaching and acknowledges how the church feels more significant. She says it wasn't like this when she first arrived here from the north, and reflects on how much things have changed. She admits that she hasn't changed, and Lawrence assures her that her hometown probably hasn't changed either. Holo and Lawrence reunite with Jaron. Lawrence accepts Jaron's offer, but tells him he can't pay him up front, and he says he must exchange his furs for cash first to attain money. Jaron tells Lawrence to meet him at Pazio so they can whip up a contract. He tells Lawrence to visit a bar called Yorin once he arrives there. After Jaron leaves, Holo and Lawrence hop on their carriage. While traversing, the two discuss time concerning the villagers and Lawrence himself. Holo touches upon wolves and why they attack humans, and she says they do so to eat their heads and gain their power, and Lawrence reveals that wolves attacked him 8 times in the past. Holo rambles about her species' activities more, which upset Lawrence. During this discussion, Lawrence recalls a tragic experience regarding several wolves feasting on one of his former comrades. After passing through a town, Holo shares her opinion on wolves, dogs, and humans concerning their relationship, and she says wolves often ponder ways to defeat humans since dogs are closer to humans than wolves. Lawrence questions if Holo had a tragic experience with humans before, but she refuses to answer. Later, Holo and Lawrence rest at a nearby tree, and Holo tells Lawrence that they each live in entirely different worlds. Holo and Lawrence arrive at Pazio Town, but before they enter, Lawrence questions Holo's appearance, wondering if she should hide her face. Holo doesn't respond kindly to that remark, and tells Lawrence that the residents know of Holo's existence through many tales. Holo feels she'll be fine since the people here have probably forgotten her, and Lawrence hopes that will be the case. Lawrence prattles on about his comrade's apple venture in town. While Lawrence rambles, Holo marvels at all the delicious food items. She tells Lawrence she wants an apple, so he hands her a silver coin to let her buy a couple of apples. After resting for a while, they continue exploring Pazio, and Lawrence tells Holo they'll be arriving at the Malone Trading Company. He wants to sell them his fur pelts since this company likes purchasing items for a high price and also hopes to investigate the intel Jaron gave them. Lawrence meets with a company official and tells him he'd like to sell his marten fur pelts to him. The official says they've experienced bountiful crop harvests lately, so their people haven't obtained many marten pelts, and they offer Lawrence 132 coins, but Lawrence negotiates for a better trade. He nabs 140 silver coins from the negotiation. Holo intervenes and entices the official to give them 210 silver coins instead. Later, Holo and Lawrence visit a bar, and Holo notices Lawrence might be upset that Holo pulled off a better deal than he did. She tells Lawrence she used a similar method she saw a different merchant from the past use. Holo also keys Lawrence in on how she made the marten fur pelts smell like apples. She feels the official should be amazed by her trickery and not flustered. After that, Lawrence updates Holo on his silver coin information gathering activities and says he hasn't come across much data, yet he's okay with everything as long as he doesn't lose money. Later, Sharon arrives. He and Lawrence discuss the silver coin debacle and Sharon's share. Sharon says he only wants 10% of Lawrence's profits and says he doesn't want to feel responsible if Lawrence ends up at a loss. Sharon then tells Lawrence that the settlement date will be 3 days before the large spring market next year. After that, Lawrence and Sharon agree on a contract that both will sign tomorrow. Lawrence and Holo visit their inn room later, and Lawrence gives Holo a lesson on the different types of silver coins. He explains when kingdoms rise and fall, new ones, along with the church, mint new coin types. After Lawrence and Holo meet and bid farewell to Sharon, we see them exploring Pasio Town while discussing the value of the Trenny silver coin. Then Lawrence purchases an item for Holo to eat. After that, Lawrence shares his opinion on Sharon's tale regarding silver coins, and Lawrence feels Sharon's tale holds merit and that Holo's lie detection skills aren't sharp. After more coin chatter ensues, the two meet with one of Lawrence's currency dealer acquaintances, Waze. Waze acts flirtatious toward Holo, and Lawrence stops him because he wants to see some of Waze's recently minted Trenny silver coins, and Waze lays the coins in front of Lawrence and Holo. He says nothing has changed about them despite some being older and newer coins. Holo asks Waze to hand the coins to her. Holo grabs the coins and starts shaking them to check their purity, but unfortunately, Holo tells Waze she can't tell if the coins are pure. Later, Lawrence confronts Holo about what she said to Waze. Lawrence learns Holo has coin purity detection skills. Holo says she didn't want to tell Waze the truth because it was her way of thanking Lawrence. Lawrence questions Holo's remark, and Holo says she was thrilled that her successful attempt made Lawrence jealous of her craft. She tells Lawrence the newer coins sound dull, unlike the old ones, and this indicates to Lawrence that the silver coins' purity levels are decreasing, meaning Sharon lied to him. Lawrence grieves about this discovery with Holo in the bar, and she does her best to calm Lawrence and convinces him to change his perspective of their situation. After hearing Holo out, Lawrence makes a discovery and tells Holo they should head for the Malone Trading Company. We see Lawrence's discussion with Sharon, and Holo notices a blonde-haired man behind Sharon drinking a beverage, but Holo continues drinking. After Lawrence and Holo bid farewell to Sharon, we cut to Lawrence and Holo speaking with the man Holo spotted at the bar. It appears Lawrence asked him to look into Sharon for him. Lawrence delves into detail about Sharon's wrongdoings and lies regarding the silver coins. The man believes the mastermind will make much money off the foolish merchants. He promises Lawrence he'll inform his trading company's superiors about this. At the end, Holo asks Lawrence if the Malone Trading Company will act swiftly. She says they won't benefit from this if they don't. Lawrence thinks otherwise and mentions how this company is one of the top-notch ones at seizing opportunities. Holo then laughs and informs Lawrence about a man she met in the past who wasn't shocked by her wolf form. Holo confirms it's the same man from Paslow Village who asked her to bring bountiful wheat harvests. The two then meet with a branch manager named Rickton Marlhite. Rickton says he'll take the deal and confirms that Meteo Trading is backing Sharon. With matters settled, Lawrence and Rickton discuss shares, and we cut to Lawrence and Holo walking somewhere. Lawrence is filled with glee due to the amount of Trenny silver coins that may head his way soon, so Lawrence reveals he told Holo to stay at the inn. But Holo says she chose to leave the inn because she feared someone would take advantage of Lawrence. They visit the inn. While Holo is resting, Lawrence works on a portrait of his dream shop. Holo wakes up seconds later and asks Lawrence about his dream. Lawrence says most traveling merchants spend time visiting different locations, so opening a store will make him feel like a member of that ideal town. Holo argues she'll be at a loss if Lawrence achieves his dream, and says if Lawrence opens a store, it'll lower his motivation to travel, and she'll have to find a new traveling buddy. Lawrence notices Holo's upset and offers to travel with her until she reaches her homeland, and also says even if he obtains money, he won't be able to own the store immediately. Holo opens up to Lawrence about a dream she's been having lately in which she's completely alone, and this is why she travels. Lawrence notices Holo's all sticky because of her tears. He crumbles up his drawing and asks Hollow to use the drawing to clean herself, and before Lawrence heads to sleep, Hollow grabs him and the two hide underneath the sheets. Lawrence questions what Hollow's doing, and she tells him that she remembers what she needed to tell him. She tells Lawrence there are 3 people by their door who may be working for Medio Trading. She hands Lawrence his gear and says they should leave immediately, so Lawrence and Hollow escape via the inn's window. Hollow tells Lawrence to abandon his carriage and says they can retrieve it when things calm down. Hollow and Lawrence stop at a wall to plan. Hollow tells Lawrence to head for the Malone Trading Company. Meanwhile, she plans to distract the men chasing them. Hollow tells Lawrence that she can hide her appearance from the men for a day or 2 so she's not worried about getting caught, because she feels Lawrence will rescue her no matter what. Lawrence and Hollow enact the plan, so Lawrence goes to the Malone Trading Company and yells for someone to save him from the people chasing him, and fortunately several men grab Lawrence and take him inside. The men scare off the people chasing Lawrence, so he thanks the men for saving him and apologizes. Lawrence informs the men and a few others of who those other men are. The blonde-haired man from earlier believes those enemy men were from Medio Trading. Lawrence argues those men chased after him and Hollow because of the deal he forged with him. The man confirms someone captured a young girl, and Lawrence says this is Hollow and he asks the man to help him save her. The man says he'd rather choose his company's profits over saving Lawrence or Hollow, but before Lawrence leaves, the man stops him and understands Lawrence's frustrations but finds it odd they target Lawrence. He has a hunch Lawrence has some leverage against the Malone Trading Company, and Lawrence knows what it could be, but before he can tell the blonde-haired man what that is, someone knocks on the door. The man who saved Lawrence's life arrives with a letter, and Lawrence asks the man to let him read the letter. Lawrence learns that Medio Trading has Hollow and may have brought her to the church, so Lawrence tells the man and his ally the truth about Hollow and her powers, which surprises them. We then cut to Hollow baring her fangs and frizzing her tail at some men. Someone appears and she seems to recognize this individual. We see Rickton and Lawrence chatting about Hollow and the letter they received. Rickton's frightened by the letter. He says if they don't withdraw from the deal, Medio Trading will send Hollow to the church. Rickton mentions how sheltering Hollow will entice the church to meddle with them and is also unsure where he and his subordinate can hide Hollow. Lawrence suggests escaping town, but Rickton says that's a ridiculous notion. Moreover, he says Malone Trading Company can't resolve this issue with cash and explains why that's the case. Lawrence wishes they had a trump card, and Rickton says they can report Medio Trading for sheltering Hollow, and Lawrence questions about the privilege they'd obtained from the Trenny King. Rickton argues the royal family's finances are tight, and Lawrence agrees. Lawrence says it makes sense considering the market's current silver coins are being turned into low-purity versions. Also, Lawrence knows the family will receive short-term benefits from this. He feels it's the biggest profit the Malone Trading Company will gain by purchasing their silver coins. Lawrence argues they should use this deal as their trump card before Medio Trading strikes them, so Lawrence brings up the Trenny King's current predicament to Rickton. Through this discussion, Rickton realizes if the church attacks them, the Trenny Kingdom will become the church's enemy. Moreover, Lawrence says if the Malone Trading Company offers Medio Trading the rights they seek, the Malone Trading Company can make a nice profit and save Hollow. Lawrence knows his plan has a flaw. He says Medio Trading hasn't collected every silver coin, and says this deal involves taking advantage of the Trenny King's weakness. He believes this is why they collected merchants secretly to obtain silver coins through cheap schemes. Lawrence argues if Medio Trading had enough silver, they would have sent Hollow to the church immediately, so Lawrence says he plans to rescue Hollow and flee from place to place until the Malone Trading Company completes their deal. Moreover, Lawrence tells Rickton he and Hollow can avoid detection for 2 days, and as long as Rickton can bring him the promised coins, everything will go smoothly. The two head to a carriage, and Rickton says the church is the Malone Trading Company's greatest enemy, and he says they must complete this mission before the church makes a move. Before Lawrence departs, Rickton whispers Pyrian and Numai into his ear. He tells Lawrence it's important for him to remember those terms. Lawrence departs with several Malone Trading Company personnel via a carriage. A man says Lawrence will travel through a secret underground pathway, and says Lawrence will be below the building where Hollow hostage. The man says he and his allies will save Hollow once the market's opening bell goes off. Also, the man says if Lawrence sees a floorboard open up, that means the man and his friends saved Hollow. Most importantly, if Lawrence hears Ra, he must wait for Hollow to join him, yet if he hears Peruso, he must escape via their planned path. Eventually, Lawrence and his allies arrive at their destination. Lawrence enters the secret pathway and arrives at its endpoint minutes later. Hollow appears and tells Lawrence to move to the right so she can join him. Hollow joins Lawrence and tells him to grab their shares from the Malone Trading Company individual above. This same person joins them and the three head to the other side of the pathway. There, Hollow and Lawrence use a ladder and hop aboard the carriage Lawrence was using earlier. The gentleman departs with the bags. Hollow and Lawrence chat during their carriage ride. Hollow is upset Lawrence relied on cowardly methods to save her, but Lawrence is glad Hollow's safe. She mentions a human stood up to her while she was held prisoner, and says this human was Yuri. She says Yuri had shared mean-spirited remarks with her. The two then arrive at their next destination. Lawrence tells one of the carriage drivers that Count Erhendet is behind Medio trading. Moreover, he says the wheat-dealing merchants in Erhendet's territory are the ones who must collect the Trenny silver coins and wants this carriage driver to relay this intel to Richten. Lawrence and Hollow enter a new underground pathway. The two complement each other's appearances and traverse through the pathway. Meanwhile, we see Yuri and his men looking for Hollow and Lawrence, and Yuri is frustrated. Hollow and Lawrence explores the underground pathway, and Hollow hears a few pursuers' footsteps nearby and urges Lawrence to find an exit. Lawrence says he's unsure if he'll be able to find one, but suddenly she hears some hounds in the distance and tells Lawrence to cover his ears. Hollow howls at the hounds and entices them to leave her and Lawrence alone. Lawrence and Hollow use this chance to flee, and they notice someone opening a floorboard nearby. They hide while the man who opened the floorboard tells them that the Malone Trading Company ratted them out. Lawrence has a hunch the man is bluffing, but he tells Hollow that they should flee. But another man arrives and informs the others that he found Lawrence and Hollow. The men chase Hollow and Lawrence to a dead end. Lawrence and Hollow fight the men, and this results in Lawrence getting severely wounded. Fortunately, Lawrence defeats the foe and continues traversing through the underground pathway with Hollow. Then Lawrence faints and awakens some time later, and Hollow tells Lawrence she smells a light source ahead and suggests they head in that direction. The two arrive below a vacant well and Hollow's upset this is what she sensed earlier, but the men from earlier arrive, alongside Yuri, and Yuri greets Lawrence and the two discuss the Trenny silver coin Fidesco and how it involves Medio trading. Yuri doesn't care about that business and all he wants is for Lawrence to hand Hollow to him so he can send her to the church. He says this will destroy the Malone Trading Company and has a hunch Lawrence won't comply, so he tries warming Lawrence up to the idea of abandoning Hollow. Although Lawrence understands the value he can obtain by siding with Yuri, he tells Yuri that he doesn't want to destroy his contractual obligations with Hollow. This disappoints Yuri and encourages him to tell the others to murder Lawrence and capture Hollow, but before Lawrence defends himself and Hollow from Yuri's men, Hollow shoves Lawrence to the ground and starts drinking Lawrence's blood. The men are baffled by Hollow's actions. Yuri tells them to show no fear and Hollow tells Lawrence not to look at her. Hollow transforms into a large wolf and the men flee in fear, and she chases after them, knocking each one of them out. Hollow returns to Lawrence and Yuri's location. Before she kills Yuri, Lawrence tells her to stop. Hollow bites Yuri's jacket and drops Yuri and his jacket, and notices Lawrence cowering in fear, and she grabs her wheat pouch and leaves. Lawrence calls out to Hollow, but she continues moving forward. He faints and wakes up in a different location. Richten greets Lawrence and apologizes for causing him trouble. Richten also says the church didn't locate Hollow and that he's thankful she didn't transform in a public area, and Lawrence learns that Richten saw Hollow's true form. Richten says his subordinates arrived moments after Lawrence fainted. At this time, Hollow protected Lawrence from everybody, but Richten says he saw Hollow protecting Lawrence. Richten then says after he brought Lawrence to this location with Hollow, Hollow left without telling him where she was going, and says it's been a day since Hollow left this place. After that, Richten tells the Malone Trading Company obtained the Trenny King's privilege, and says Medio Trading won't report Hollow to the church now that they have that. He tells Lawrence how much money they've earned and gives Lawrence his 50% share of the profit. Although Lawrence and Richten aren't fond of the results, Richten presents Lawrence with better profit-oriented news concerning Medio Trading and the Malone Trading Company. After that, Lawrence says he'd like Richten to supply him with pepper as payment. Lawrence explains why he wants Richten to pay him in pepper. Richten then rambles about an old religious tale. After that, Richten promises Lawrence he'll get his pepper supply ready for him, and a Malone Trading Company worker arrives and hands Richten a letter. Richten examines the letter and tells Lawrence someone sent an invoice to him. Lawrence reads the letter and asks Richten where his loading area is, and Richten tells Lawrence where he can find it, and Lawrence leaves to find that place. Lawrence arrives and notices Hollow sitting in a carriage, and Hollow tells Lawrence she doesn't want to return home until she repays Lawrence.